The bomb threat against the federal building at 2:47 p.m. gave them 18 minutes to evacuate 2,800 government employees before the device detonated, but the caller knew exactly where security cameras were positioned. What the bomber didn't know was that the building's security supervisor coordinating the evacuation wasn't just checking visitor badges. He was a former Secret Service agent whose bomb threat training had prepared him to recognize when threats were real and time was running out. For 11 years, Michael Patterson had been the invisible protector of the Theodore Roosevelt Federal Building. As head of security for one of the government's most important regional facilities, he oversaw the safety of 2,800 federal employees who worked in agencies ranging from the FBI field office to Social Security Administration. To the government workers passing through his checkpoints daily, he was simply Mike, the professional security supervisor who somehow made federal building safety look effortless even during high-alert periods. What they didn't know was that Michael carried credentials that would have shocked the entire federal security apparatus. Hidden in his secure apartment was a Secret Service identification documenting 14 years protecting the highest levels of government, including presidential details and counter-terrorism operations. The same eyes that now monitored visitor screening had once scanned crowds for threats against the President of the United States, where missing a single behavioral indicator could change the course of history. Those 14 years had taken Michael through some of the most dangerous assignments in federal law enforcement. Secret Service agents were specialists in threat assessment, bomb detection, and protecting high-value targets in environments where attacks could come from any direction. Michael had secured presidential events, investigated assassination plots, and learned to identify explosive devices in situations where one mistake could kill the leader of the free world. The transition from Secret Service to federal building security had been more challenging than most career changes. After spending over a decade where every decision could affect national security, managing routine building access felt almost mundane. But Michael had learned something during his government service that kept him focused. Protecting federal employees was protecting the government itself, and threats against government facilities were threats against democracy. The Theodore Roosevelt Federal Building was one of the most complex security environments Michael had managed. The 18-story facility housed 12 different federal agencies, processed thousands of visitors monthly, and contained classified operations that made it a potential target for domestic and international terrorists. The building's downtown location, high-profile tenants, and symbolic value created conditions where any security incident could have national implications. Michael had been monitoring concerning intelligence from federal counter-terrorism agencies. Domestic extremist groups had specifically mentioned federal buildings as targets for attacks designed to damage government operations and create maximum media impact. The combination of symbolic value, high casualty potential, and government disruption made federal facilities attractive targets for anyone seeking to make violent political statements. Today's threat level was elevated. Intelligence reports indicated increased chatter among extremist groups about potential attacks on federal facilities, and Michael had implemented additional screening protocols based on threat assessments that combined federal intelligence with his Secret Service experience. What concerned Michael wasn't the routine daily operations, it was the perfect storm of factors that could turn a normal workday into a mass casualty disaster. High employee density, public access requirements, and the kind of symbolic target value that attracted terrorists seeking maximum impact. The workday began normally at 8 a.m. Michael positioned himself at the main security checkpoint, where he could observe visitor flow while coordinating with his team positioned throughout the building's multiple floors. The initial volume was typical for Tuesday morning, steady government business with federal employees, contractors, and citizens accessing various agency services. At 1:30 p.m., Michael received the first indication that something was different. A visitor attempting to enter the building had triggered multiple behavioral indicators that Michael's Secret Service training had taught him to recognize as potential threat signals. The individual was nervous, sweating despite cool weather, and carrying a briefcase that he was unusually protective of during the screening process. Michael discreetly activated enhanced screening procedures and began conducting what the Secret Service called behavioral threat assessment, analyzing the visitors' responses to routine questions and observing physical indicators that suggested deception or hostile intent. The individual's answers were consistent, but his body language suggested he was under significant stress. At 2:15 p.m., Michael's suspicions were heightened when surveillance cameras captured the same individual conducting what appeared to be reconnaissance of the building's security measures, emergency exits, and structural features. This wasn't normal visitor behavior, it was systematic intelligence gathering that suggested potential attack planning. Michael activated the federal building's threat reporting system and began coordinating with FBI counterterrorism specialists to investigate the suspicious activity. His Secret Service background had taught him that terrorist operations typically involve detailed reconnaissance phases that preceded actual attacks. At 2:30 p.m., the suspicious individual left the building without completing any apparent business with federal agencies. Michael's surveillance team tracked him to a vehicle parked 3 blocks away, where he met with 2 additional individuals who immediately left the area in different directions. Michael realized he was observing the final phases of what appeared to be a coordinated operation targeting the Theodore Roosevelt Federal Building. His Secret Service training told him that this level of coordination and reconnaissance typically preceded imminent attacks. The anonymous caller was specific and credible in ways that immediately triggered Michael's Secret Service training. The threat wasn't vague or general, it included details about the building's layout, security procedures, and specific locations that suggested the caller had intimate knowledge of the facility's operations. "There's a bomb in the Theodore Roosevelt Federal Building," the electronically disguised voice said. "You have 18 minutes to evacuate everyone before it detonates. We know where your cameras are positioned, and we're watching your response." Michael's Secret Service experience immediately recognized this as a credible threat. The caller's knowledge of security camera positions, specific timing, and detailed building information indicated this wasn't a hoax, it was a real bomb threat from someone who had conducted extensive reconnaissance of the target. Michael activated the building's emergency evacuation system and began implementing what the Secret Service called bomb threat response protocols, procedures designed to protect lives while creating conditions for explosive device detection and neutralization. His 14 years of experience had included numerous bomb threat investigations, and he knew that timing was critical. Working with federal agency supervisors, Michael began coordinating the evacuation of 2,800 government employees from an 18-story building in less than 18 minutes. The Secret Service had trained him for exactly this scenario, mass evacuation under time pressure with an unknown explosive device that could detonate at any moment. But Michael's training also told him that something was wrong with the threat. The caller's knowledge of security camera positions suggested they were observing the building's response in real time, which meant the bomb might not be the only threat. This could be a coordinated attack designed to funnel evacuees into a secondary attack zone. Michael began implementing what the Secret Service called tactical evacuation, moving people out of the building while protecting them from potential secondary attacks that could target evacuation routes and assembly areas. His experience protecting high-value targets had taught him that sophisticated attackers often used initial threats to create predictable response patterns that could be exploited for follow-up attacks. As the evacuation proceeded, Michael coordinated with FBI bomb technicians who were en route to the building. But with only 18 minutes and 2,800 people to evacuate, Michael knew that bomb squad response might arrive too late to prevent casualties if the threat was real. Michael made the decision that his Secret Service training had prepared him for. He would conduct preliminary bomb detection while the evacuation continued, using his explosive device training to locate potential threats before specialist teams arrived. Michael began implementing what the Secret Service called rapid threat assessment, systematic searching for explosive devices in high-probability locations while coordinating ongoing evacuation operations. His 14 years of training had included extensive work in bomb detection and threat neutralization. Using his knowledge of terrorist tactics and explosive device placement, Michael began searching areas where bombs would be most effective against the building's structure and occupants. The caller's specific timing suggested they knew exactly where the device was positioned and how much damage it would cause. Michael's Secret Service training had taught him that bombers typically placed devices in locations that would maximize casualties while ensuring successful detonation. This meant focusing on structural support areas, high traffic zones, and locations where explosive force would be amplified by the building's architecture. Working through the building's lower levels, Michael used portable detection equipment to scan for the chemical signatures and electronic components that indicated explosive devices. His experience with presidential security had required familiarity with every type of explosive device that could threaten high-value targets. At 2:58 p.m., with 7 minutes remaining before the threatened detonation, Michael's detection equipment indicated the presence of explosive materials in the building's main electrical room. The location was tactically perfect. An explosion there would disable emergency systems while causing maximum structural damage to the foundation. Michael immediately contacted the FBI bomb squad with the device location and began implementing what the Secret Service called area isolation, ensuring that the explosive device was contained in a way that would minimize casualties if detonation occurred before the bomb squad could arrive. But Michael's examination of the device revealed something that changed his understanding of the entire threat. The bomb was real and sophisticated, but it wasn't set to detonate in 7 minutes. The timing mechanism showed it was actually set to explode in exactly 43 minutes, during the time when first responders and emergency personnel would be concentrated around the building. Michael realized he was dealing with a coordinated attack designed to kill not just government employees, but also the law enforcement and emergency response personnel who would respond to the initial threat. This was domestic terrorism, planned with the kind of tactical sophistication that his Secret Service experience had taught him to recognize as extremely dangerous. The bomber's 18-minute timeline was designed to create panic and confusion while positioning maximum targets for the real attack that would come later. Michael's discovery that the real detonation was scheduled for 43 minutes later completely changed the tactical situation. Instead of a simple bomb threat requiring evacuation, this was a coordinated terrorist attack designed to maximize casualties among government employees and first responders. Michael immediately contacted FBI counterterrorism specialists with intelligence that revealed the true scope of the threat. The bomber wasn't just trying to destroy a building, they were implementing a multi-phase attack designed to kill federal employees during evacuation and then target law enforcement during response operations. Working with federal tactical teams, Michael began implementing what the Secret Service called comprehensive threat neutralization, addressing not just the immediate explosive device, but also the secondary and tertiary threats that sophisticated attackers often employed to maximize casualties. Michael's analysis of the bomb's construction and timing revealed that the terrorist had extensive knowledge of federal building operations, emergency response procedures, and law enforcement tactical protocols. This suggested either inside knowledge or significant reconnaissance that went far beyond what typical domestic extremists possessed. Using his Secret Service experience in threat investigation, Michael began coordinating with FBI agents to identify how the bomber had obtained such detailed knowledge of the building's operations. The investigation revealed that the terrorist had been conducting surveillance for over 6 months, using multiple identities to access the building and gather intelligence about security procedures. The FBI's rapid response to Michael's intelligence led to the identification and arrest of the bomber before the device could detonate. The individual was found in a location where he could observe the building and potentially trigger secondary attacks against emergency responders. Michael's coordination with bomb squad technicians resulted in the safe neutralization of the explosive device, which analysis revealed was powerful enough to have killed dozens of people and caused catastrophic structural damage to the federal building. When FBI Special Agent Rodriguez arrived to coordinate the investigation, she found Michael providing detailed tactical intelligence about the terrorists' methods, capabilities, and potential associates based on his analysis of the attack planning and execution. "How did you manage to identify this as a multi-phase attack and locate the device so quickly?" Agent Rodriguez asked. The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of what Michael had prevented. The bomber wasn't an isolated domestic extremist. He was part of a larger network planning coordinated attacks against federal facilities in multiple cities. The Theodore Roosevelt Federal Building was intended to be the first in a series of attacks designed to disrupt government operations and create nationwide panic. FBI counterterrorism analysis showed that the attack plan included specific timing designed to maximize casualties among federal employees during evacuation and emergency responders during the response phase. The bomber's knowledge of federal security procedures and building operations had enabled him to plan an attack that would have killed dozens and created the kind of mass casualty event that domestic terrorists sought for maximum political impact. The successful prevention of the attack became a case study for federal building security agencies nationwide. Michael's tactical response demonstrated how Secret Service expertise could be applied to civilian federal facility protection in ways that traditional building security couldn't match. The General Services Administration, recognizing that Michael had saved both lives and critical government operations, offered him the position of Director of Federal Building Security for the entire regional district. The federal government also implemented new security protocols based on Michael's Secret Service training for high-threat facilities. But perhaps the most significant recognition came from the Department of Homeland Security, which invited Michael to develop training programs for federal building security personnel based on his successful application of Secret Service tactics to civilian government facility protection. His expertise bridged the gap between presidential protection and federal building security. Michael remained with Federal Building Security as their regional director, but his role had evolved beyond traditional facility management. He became a consultant for government facilities nationwide on domestic terrorism threats, helping other federal buildings develop security protocols that could detect and defeat the kind of coordinated attacks that had targeted the Theodore Roosevelt Federal Building. During normal workdays when federal employees conducted government business without knowing how close they'd come to becoming victims of domestic terrorism, Michael still monitored the building with the same threat awareness he'd brought to Secret Service operations. But now he understood something that had taken him years to learn. Protecting government workers didn't require presidential details or White House assignments. Sometimes the most important Secret Service work happened in places where nobody expected to find a former presidential protection agent, places where terrorist attacks were prevented before they could succeed, where democracy could function safely because someone with extraordinary training chose to use those skills to protect ordinary government employees from extraordinary threats. Michael Patterson had spent 14 years protecting the president and other high-value government targets. Now he spent his time ensuring that federal workers could serve their country without fear, knowing that someone with the training and commitment to defeat domestic terrorists was watching. And in the end, he realized, both missions were exactly the same, using elite federal law enforcement skills to protect American democracy from those who would destroy it, ensuring that government could function without fear of those who sought to undermine it through violence and terror.